Welcome back in part 8 of BBC. Let's continue about BBC. The BBC operates several television channels nationally and internationally.
BBC One and BBC Two are the flagship television channels.
Others include the youth channel BBC Three, which originally ceased broadcasting as a linear television channel in February 2016 and returned to television in February 2022. Cultural and documentary channel BBC Four. News channels BBC News and the BBC World News. Parliamentary channel BBC Parliament. And two children's channels, CBBC and CBBS.
Digital television is now entrenched in the UK, with analog transmission completely phased out as of December 2012.
BBC One is a regionalised TV service, which provides opt-outs throughout the day for local news and other local programming.
These variations are more pronounced in the BBC nations, that is, Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales, where the presentation is mostly carried out locally on BBC One and Two, and where program schedules can vary greatly from that of the network.
BBC Two variations exist in the nations. However, English regions today rarely have the option to opt out as regional programming now only exists on BBC One.
In 2019, the Scottish variation of BBC Two ceased operation and was replaced with a network version in favour of the BBC Scotland channel.
BBC Two was also the first channel to be transmitted on 625 lines in 1964, then carry a small-scale regular colour service from 1967.
BBC One would follow in November 1969.
A new Scottish Gaelic television channel, BBC Alva, was launched in September 2008.
It is also the first multi-genre channel to come entirely from Scotland, with almost all of its programs made in Scotland.
The service was initially only available via satellite, but since June 2011, has been available to viewers in Scotland on Freeview and cable television. The BBC currently operates HD simulcasts of all its nationwide channels, with the exception of BBC Parliament.
Until 26 March 2013, a separate channel, called BBC HD, was available in place of BBC Two HD.
It launched on 15 May 2006, following a 12-month trial of the broadcasts.
It became a proper channel in 2007 and screened HD programs as simulcasts of the main network, or as repeats.
The corporation has been producing programs in the format for many years and stated that it hoped to produce 100% of new programs in HD TV by 2010.
On 3 November 2010, a high-definition simulcast of BBC One was launched, entitled BBC One HD, and BBC Two HD, launched on 26 March 2013, replacing BBC HD.
Scotland's new television channel, BBC Scotland, launched in February 2019. In the Republic of Ireland, Belgium, the Netherlands and Switzerland, the BBC channels are available in a number of ways.
In these countries, digital and cable operators carry a range of BBC channels.
These include BBC One, BBC Two, BBC Four and BBC World News, although viewers in the Republic of Ireland may receive BBC services via overspill from transmitters in Northern Ireland or Wales, or via deflectors transmitters in the Republic, which rebroadcast broadcasts from the UK received off-air or from digital satellite. Since 1975, the BBC has also provided its TV programs to the British Forces Broadcasting Service, the FVS, allowing members of UK military serving abroad to watch them on 4 dedicated TV channels.
From 27 March 2015, the FVS will carry versions of BBC One and BBC Two, which will include children's programming from CBBC, as well as carrying programming from BBC Three on a new channel called the FVS Extra.
Since 2008, all the BBC channels are available to watch online through the BBC iPlayer service.
This online streaming ability came about following experiments with live streaming involving streaming certain channels in the UK.
In February 2014, Director General Tony Hall announced that the corporation needed to save £100 million.
In March 2014, the BBC confirmed plans for BBC Three to become an internet-only channel.
In December 2012, the BBC completed a digitization exercise, scanning the listings of all BBC programs from an entire run of about 4,500 copies of the Radio Times magazine from the first 1923 issue to 2009, later listings already being held electronically. The BBC Genome Project, with a view to creating an online database of its program output.
An earlier 10 months of listings are to be obtained from other sources.
They identified around 5 million programs, involving 8.5 million actors, presenters, writers and technical staff.
The Genome Project was open to public access on 15 October 2014. With corrections to OCR errors and changes to advertised schedules being crowdsourced.
The BBC has 10 radio stations serving the whole of the UK, a further 7 stations in the national regions, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, and 39 other local stations serving defined areas of England.
Of the 10 national stations, 5 are major stations and are available on FM or AM as well as on DAB and online.
These are BBC Radio 1, offering new music and popular styles and being notable for its chart show. BBC Radio 2, playing adult contemporary, country and soul music amongst many other genres. BBC Radio 3, presenting classical and jazz music together with some spoken word programming of a cultural nature in the evenings. BBC Radio 4, focusing on current affairs, factual and other speech-based programming, including drama and comedy. And BBC Radio 5 Live, broadcasting 24-hour news, sport and talk programs. In addition to these 5 stations, the BBC runs a further 5 stations that broadcast on DAB and online only.
These stations supplement and expand on the Big 5 stations that were launched in 2002.
BBC Radio 1 Extra Sisters Radio 1 and broadcasts new black music and urban tracks.
BBC Radio 5 Sports Extra Sisters 5 Live and offers extra sport analysis, including broadcasting sports that previously were not covered.
BBC Radio 6 Music offers alternative music genres and is notable as a platform for new artists. BBC Radio 7, later renamed BBC Radio 4 Extra, provided archive drama, comedy and children's programming.
Following the change to Radio 4 Extra, the service has dropped the defined children's strand in favor of family-friendly drama and comedy.
In addition, new programs to complement Radio 4 programs were introduced, such as Ambridge Extra and Desert Island Discs Revisited.
The final station is the BBC Asian Network, providing music, talk and news to this section of the community.
This station evolved out of local radio stations serving certain areas, and as such this station is available on medium wave frequency in some areas of the Midlands. As well as the national stations, the BBC also provides 40 BBC local radio stations in England and the Channel Islands, each named for and covering a particular city and its surrounding area. For example, BBC Radio Bristol. County or region, for example. BBC Three Counties Radio or geographical area, for example. BBC Radio Solent, covering the central south coast.
A further 6 stations broadcast in what the BBC terms the national regions, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland.
These are BBC Radio Wales in English, BBC Radio Cymru in Welsh, BBC Radio Scotland in English, BBC Radio Namgadiel in Scottish Gaelic, BBC Radio Ulster and BBC Radio Foyle, the latter being an opt-out station from Radio Ulster for the northwest of Northern Ireland. The BBC's UK national channels are also broadcast in the Channel Islands and the Isle of Man, although these Crown dependencies are outside the UK, and in the former there are 2 local stations, BBC Guernsey and BBC Radio Jersey.
There is no BBC local radio station, however, in the Isle of Man, partly because the island has long been served by the popular independent commercial station, Manx Radio, which predates the existence of BBC local radio.
BBC services in the dependencies are financed from television license fees, which are set at the same level as those payable in the UK, although collected locally.
This is the subject of some controversy in the Isle of Man since, as well as having no BBC local radio service, the island also lacks a local television news service analogous to that provided by BBC Channel Islands.
For a worldwide audience, the BBC World Service provides news, current affairs and information in 28 languages, including English, around the world and is available in over 150 capital cities.
It is broadcast worldwide on shortwave radio, DAB and online and has an estimated weekly audience of 192 million, and its websites have an audience of 38 million people per week.
Since 2005, it is also available on DAB in the UK, a step not taken before, due to the way it is funded.
The service is funded by a parliamentary grant and aid administered by the Foreign Office. However, following the government's spending review in 2011, this funding will cease, and it will be funded for the first time through the license fee.
In recent years, some services of the World Service have been reduced. The Thai service ended in 2006, as did the Eastern European languages.
Resources were diverted instead into the new BBC Arabic television.
Historically, the BBC was the only legal radio broadcaster based in the UK mainland until 1967, when University Radio York, URY, then under the name Radio York, was launched as the first, and now oldest, legal independent radio station in the country.
However, the BBC did not enjoy a complete monopoly before this, as several continental stations, such as Radio Luxembourg, had broadcast programs in English to Britain since the 1930s, and the Isle of Man-based Manx Radio began in 1964.
Today, despite the advent of commercial radio, BBC radio stations remain among the most listened to in the country.
Radio 2 has the largest audience share, up to 16.8% in 2011 to 12, and radios 1 and 4 ranked second and third in terms of weekly reach.
BBC programming is also available to other services and in other countries.
Since 1943, the BBC has provided radio programming to the British Forces Broadcasting Service, which broadcasts in countries where British troops are stationed.
BBC Radio 1 is also carried in Canada on Sirius XM Radio, online streaming only. The BBC is a patron of the Radio Academy. BBC News is the largest broadcast news gathering operation in the world, providing services to BBC domestic radio as well as television networks such as the BBC News, BBC Parliament and BBC World News.
In addition to this, news stories are available on the BBC Red Button service and BBC News Online.
In addition to this, the BBC has been developing new ways to access BBC News and as a result, has launched the service on BBC Mobile, making it accessible to mobile phones and PDAs. As well as developing alerts by email on digital television and on computers through a desktop alert. Ratings figures suggest that during major incidents such as the 7 July 2005 London bombings or oil events, the UK audience overwhelmingly turns to the BBC's coverage as opposed to its commercial rivals.
On 7 July 2005, the day that there were a series of coordinated bomb blasts on London's public transport system, the BBC online website recorded an all-time bandwidth peak of 11 gigabits per second at 12 o'clock on 7 July.
BBC News received some 1 billion total hits on the day of the event, including all images, text, and HTML, serving some 5.5 terabits of data.
At peak times during the day, there were 40,000 page requests per second for the BBC News website.
The previous day's announcement of the 2012 Olympics being awarded to London caused a peak of around 5 gigabits per second.
The previous all-time high at BBC Online was caused by the announcement of the Michael Jackson verdict, which used 7.2 gigabits per second.
The BBC's online presence includes a comprehensive news website and archive.
The BBC's first official online service was the BBC Networking Club, which was launched on 11 May 1994.
The service was subsequently relaunched as BBC Online in 1997, before being renamed BBCI, then bbc.co.uk, before it was rebranded back as BBC Online.
The website is funded by the license fee, but uses GeoIP technology, allowing advertisements to be carried on the site when viewed outside of the UK.
The BBC claims the site to be Europe's most popular, content-based site, and states that 13.2 million people in the UK visit the site's more than 2 million pages each day. The center of the website is the home page, which features a modular layout.
Users can choose which modules and which information is displayed on their home page, allowing the user to customize it.
This system was first launched in December 2007, becoming permanent in February 2008, and has undergone a few aesthetical changes since then.
The home page then has links to other microsites, such as BBC News Online, Sport, Weather, TV, and Radio.
As part of the site, every program on BBC television or radio is given its own page, with bigger programs getting their own microsite, and as a result it is often common for viewers and listeners to be told website addresses, URLs, for the program website. Another large part of the site also allows users to watch and listen to most television and radio output even for 7 days after broadcast using the BBC iPlayer platform, which launched on 27 July 2007, and initially used peer-to-peer and DRM technology to deliver both radio and TV content of the last 7 days, for offline use for up to 30 days. Since then, video is now streamed directly.
All Also, through participation in the Creative Archives License Group, bbc.co.uk allowed legal downloads of selected archive material via the Internet.
The BBC has often included learning as part of its online service, running services such as BBC Jam, Learning Zone class clips, and also runs services such as BBC WebWise and First Click, which are designed to teach people how to use the Internet.
BBC Jam was a free online service delivered through broadband and narrowband connections, providing high-quality interactive resources designed to stimulate learning at home and at school.
Initial content was made available in January 2006. However, BBC Jam was suspended on 20 March 2007 due to allegations made to the European Commission that it was damaging the interests of the commercial sector of the industry. In recent years, some major online companies and politicians have complained that BBC Online receives too much funding from the television license, meaning that other websites are unable to compete with a vast amount of advertising-free online content available on BBC Online.
Some have proposed that the amount of license fee money spent on BBC Online should be reduced, either being replaced with funding from advertisements or subscriptions, or a reduction in the amount of content available on the site.
In response to this, the BBC carried out an investigation and has now set in motion a plan to change the way it provides its online services.
BBC Online will now attempt to fill in gaps in the market and will guide users to other websites for currently existing market provision.
For example, instead of providing local events information and timetables, users will be guided to outside websites already providing that information.
Part of this plan included the BBC closing some of its websites and rediverting money to redevelop other parts.
On 26 February 2010, The Times claimed that Mark Thompson, Director General of the BBC, proposed that the BBC's web output should be cut by 50%, with online staff numbers and budgets reduced by 25% in a bid to scale back BBC operations and allow commercial rivals more room.
On 2 March 2010, the BBC reported that it would cut its website spending by 25% and close BBC Six Music and Asian Network. As part of Mark Thompson's plans to make a smaller, fitter BBC for the digital age.
BBC Red Button is the brand name for the BBC's interactive digital television services, which are available through Freeview, Digital Terrestrial, as well as FreeSat, Sky, Satellite, and Virgin Media Cable.
Unlike CFAX, the service's analog counterpart, BBC Red Button is able to display full-color graphics, photographs, and video, as well as programs, and can be accessed from any BBC channel.
The service carries news, weather, and sport 24 hours a day, but also provides extra features related to programs specific at that time.
Examples include viewers to play along at home to game shows, to give voice and vote on opinions to issues, as used alongside programs such as Question Time.
At some points in the year when multiple sporting events occur, some coverage of less mainstream sports or games are frequently placed on the red button for viewers to watch.
Frequently, other features are added in related to programs being broadcast at that time, such as the broadcast of the Doctor Who animated episode Dreamland in November 2009.
The BBC employs 5 staff orchestras, a professional choir, and supports 2 amateur choruses, based in BBC venues across the UK, the BBC Symphony Orchestra, the BBC Singers and BBC Symphony Chorus, based in London, the BBC Scottish Symphony Orchestra in Glasgow, the BBC Philharmonic in Salford, the BBC Concert Orchestra based in Watford, and the BBC National Orchestra of Wales and BBC National Chorus of Wales in Cardiff.
It also buys a selected number of broadcasts from the Ulster Orchestra in Belfast and the BBC Big Band.
The BBC proms have been produced by the BBC every year since 1927, stepping in to fund the popular classical music festival when music publishers Chappell & Co. withdrew their support.
In 1930, the newly formed BBC Symphony Orchestra gave all 49 proms and have performed at every last night of the prom since then.
Nowadays, the BBC's orchestras and choirs are the backbone of the proms, giving around 40% to 50% of all performances each season. Many famous musicians of every genre have played at the BBC, such as the Beatles. Live at the BBC is one of their many albums.
The BBC is also responsible for the broadcast of Glastonbury Festival, Reading Festival and United Kingdom coverage of the Eurovision Song Contest, a show with which the broadcaster has been associated for over 60 years.
The BBC also operates the division of BBC Audiobooks, sometimes found in association with Shivers Audiobooks. The BBC operates other ventures in addition to their broadcasting arm.
In addition to broadcasting output on television and radio, some programs are also displayed on the BBC big screens, located in several central city locations.
The BBC and the Foreign and Commonwealth Office also jointly run BBC Monitoring, which monitors radio, television, the press and the internet worldwide.
The BBC also developed several computers throughout the 1980s, most notably the BBC Micro, which ran alongside the corporation's educational aims and programming.
In 1951, in conjunction with Oxford University Press, the BBC published the BBC hymn book, which was intended to be used by radio listeners to follow hymns being broadcast.
The book was published both with and without music, the music edition being entitled the BBC Hymn Book with Music.
The book contained 542 popular hymns. The BBC provided the world's first teletext service called CFAX, near homophonous with CFAX, from 23 September 1974 until 23 October 2012 on the BBC One analog channel, then later on BBC Two.
It showed informational pages such as news, sport, and the weather.
From New Year's Eve, 1974, ITV's Oracle tried to compete with CFAX.
Oracle closed on New Year's Eve, 1992.
During its lifetime, CFAX attracted millions of viewers right up until 2012, prior to the digital switchover in the United Kingdom.
Since then, the BBC's Red Button service has provided a digital information system that replaced CFAX.
In 2016, the BBC, in partnership with fellow UK broadcasters ITV and Channel 4, who later withdrew from the project, set up Project Kangaroo to develop an international online streaming service to rival services such as Netflix and Hulu.
During the development stages, Britflix was touted as a potential name.
However, the service eventually launched as BritBox in March 2017.
The online platform shows a catalog of classic BBC and ITV shows, as well as making a number of programs available shortly after their UK broadcast.
As of 2021, BritBox is available in the UK, the US, Canada, Australia, and, more recently, South Africa, with a potential availability for new markets in the future. We will continue about BBC in Part 9, so stay tuned for Part 9.